Hello, my friends. This is my go-kart. I thought it'd be kind of a fun deal to put my go-kart together and show you guys how I assembled it. Maybe go out and play with it a little bit and add some content to the YouTube channel and start a new series. I'm not just an asphalt super late model racer. I do a little bit of everything. And as the title says, BJ Tidrick Racing, I race slot cars, RC cars, go-karts, stock cars, pretty much anything I can get my hands on. iRacing, I'm a huge iRacer. I just love racing, and this just kind of fills a little bit of that void in the channel. Something else you guys can look at. My goal is to be able to go out and play with it. As I make changes, I can document all that through my YouTube channel. Maybe save you guys a little bit of headache if you guys are struggling with something, or if you guys are looking to get your kart to act a certain way. Maybe we can try some different things on the kart, and whatever I learn on this, I can apply to my channels, and you guys can learn off of that, and save yourself some track time and some money down the road. If it inspires somebody to go-kart racing, awesome. But ultimately, I have a go-kart. I want to go play with it and make a couple more videos. So today is video 1. I'm going to walk through how I assembled my kart. I'm going to disassemble it from this point here and show you guys how I assembled it, certain things that I did, certain steps that I took to get the alignment and just certain things correct. And we'll get it put back together, and we're going to go out and play with it. I am still waiting on the graphics. Tyler Showman over at Overnight Wraps is hooking me up with the graphics, the numbers, and all the vinyl. And we should have that next week. So I'm hoping to add another video after this one before our first race. And then I've got all my GoPros set up so that at the first race I'll have my helmet GoPro and a couple of onboard GoPros, as well as some external footage from videotaping the race. And just kind of add that to the video and make it kind of fun and something you guys will enjoy. So like I say, I'm going to go ahead and start tearing this thing apart and show you guys what we got. One of the first things that you need to know about doing any sort of setup work is the surface that you're working on. If you're working on, say, like a wooden table or a folding table, the chances of it being nice and flat and consistent are really difficult. I do all my work on my go-kart on the same table I do a lot of my fabricating on. It's a thick plate table. I know that it's perfectly flat. I can work on stuff and not have to question whether the surface that I'm working on is irregular. I can scale on it and just know that it's right. It's just like a setup plate for the race cars. This is my setup plate. This is my fab plate for my go-kart. Another thing that I did is I built these little jack stands. I have this I-beam that I am using for my rear bumper on my Vintage Modified, which if you look through my YouTube channel, you'll see some other videos on that. I took and I made these little frame block jack stands so that I can sit my kart on it. They're all the same height. It just makes it nice to sit the kart on those. I don't have to worry about the kart falling off because they're a pretty wide base. And, it just gives me something to work off of. The table is the correct height where I can work on this thing all day long. My back's not sore. I'm not getting up and down on my knees. Life just is a bit easier when you have a good surface to work off of. All right, now that we've got the kart disassembled, it's a little bit easier to show what we got going on. This nose is actually a modified nose that 5 Star builds. I believe 5 Star builds it. I ordered it from Motor State. And I did have to do quite a bit of trimming on it. It was quite a bit bigger. It was a little bit wider. I had to narrow it up. It also had a large drop on the front that I trimmed off, so I got more of that splitter look just because, honestly, it just looks a little more badass. But this is the nose that we got. And the one thing that I did to support it was underneath. You can see that I made a large plate basically off of 3/16 ABS plastic. I use this same plastic for my side skirts on our super late models, but this actually worked really, really well to kind of tie the nose together, give it a lot of splitter support, and ultimately it keeps a lot of the dirt and the junk from flipping up underneath, and it gives us a large structure to kind of attach everything and tie everything together. To hold that nose up, I built my own bumper bar, and I used 1/2, and I ran it vertically for more strength, more support. And on the front, or on the top of it, I put these adjustable rod ends. These are 3/8 adjustable rod ends. And I did this so that I can raise and lower it. I can pull these bolts out, I can thread it in and actually raise it up, or I could thread it out and I could drop it down. And what this is going to do is it's going to ensure that the valence doesn't dig in while I'm out there racing around. If the track gets a little bit rough or gets some holes in it, or it just loses that smoothness to it, I may end up having to raise it up to keep that valence from digging in. On smoother tracks that they're not quite as rough, and the cart glides over the top of the track a little bit easier, I can drop it to keep it sealed up and use that aero a little bit more. Yeah, aero isn't that big of a deal when you're going this fast, but one, it looks cool when the valence is on the ground, and two, any aero that you can capture at all is going to be a benefit. Downforce is basically free speed as long as you don't go so far that it's just a massive amount of drag. On a cart like this, that little bit of nose downforce may be a major factor. It may be a huge benefit. With the nose on and the bumper bar and everything attached, it's easy to see the design of it, and you can see where my rod ends are on both sides so that I have the adjustment where I need it. So with having the nose designed the way that I did it, I've got some supports in there. I've got it designed so that it's got quite a bit of structure, but ultimately it's not that heavy. I use Zeus fasteners, quarter-turn Zeus fasteners underneath, and they are flush. They're countersunk, so underneath there's no, it's not like the head of a bolt hanging down. It's flush. One, again, it keeps it from digging into the ground or bottoming out, and two, it just allows that air to flow a little bit more freely underneath. The Nerf bar on the right side that I am using is an actual phantom part. This is the original Nerf bar that came with the cart. I did add some nut certs so that when I put the body on, I could thread it right in rather than having to use a wrench on the inside and a nut. It just makes life a lot easier. The left side Nerf bar, I did the same thing. I added a couple of tabs, as you can see, with nut certs so that I could bolt the side panel on it. But I built it out of 3x4" square frame rail tubing, the same stuff that we use in our late models. One of the reasons I did this was strength. It's a good, strong point, and you're sitting so close to the side of this cart. I wanted this Nerf bar to be good and strong. Two, the weight that I am adding is low and on the inside. It's to the left, so it's really not going to hurt me a whole lot. And three, if I do need to add lead, I can add lead blocks inside of this, again, to keep it low and to the left. And it's a good encasement, so I don't have to worry about the bolt ripping through the seat or through the floorboard. It's just going to be good and strong. The rear bumper I built myself. I did add some tabs. I have a 2-stroke engine that I may end up throwing on this thing and running with the open class later on. But I needed it so that it was a little bit longer because of the pipe, so I extended it. I also added some brackets on the side, as you can see there and there, to hold the side panels. I've got a couple of adjustable body supports to hold them in place. And I did safety wire it. I used this bracket that I've got to safety wire it so that as we're racing around, if it gets tagged, it doesn't slide out and fall off. Here we have the body back assembled, and you can see those support tubes and how they use the brackets. This actually builds a lot of strength into the body, and without those supports on there, that body's just going to wobble around and potentially break off, and it could be hazardous to someone that's behind me if that thing comes loose. So just for extra strength, these are aluminum rods. I get those from All Star, trim them to length, and yeah, there's a lot of strength there. The engine I am using is just a Harbor Freight Predator 212. I took this engine, I sent it over to Jim Dodson out of Spokane, Washington. He put a different flywheel, different cam in it, did a little bit of work to it, and I will be running the Stage 2, or I believe they call it the Sunset Clone class. I did run this engine on another guy's kart a couple weeks ago, and it ran really, really well, and I think it's going to provide plenty of power to run the Stage 2 class. I'm also going to be running the open mod class with this engine, which I am going to get my ass handed to me as far as horsepower goes, but I don't just want to go down there and run one class. This will give me just a little more track time to go play with my kart, try to make a couple more changes, see if we can find some handling and some speed. But ultimately, I will be at a disadvantage with this engine. My plan this summer is to get a second kart and have an open or a mod and be able to run this one so that I'll have two karts to be able to run two different classes with. This is an older chassis. It is clean, it is pretty. I did have it powder coated, and you know, it's going to do what I'm trying to do with it. It's not ideal. It doesn't have the adjustment that a lot of the new karts have. But, you know, I just want to go out and have a good time, maybe learn a few things before I get a little more heavy into it next season. And I think this kart's going to work okay. With the design of these spindles, basically I've just got to stack shims underneath, stack my washers underneath to basically lower the pin and raise the frame height. I'm going ahead and start at my maximum height just so that I know that it's not going to bottom out the first time, and it's not too difficult to pull these bolts out and move some of those shims up and lower the kart if need be. As you can see with this old spindle design, I don't have a lot of adjustment as far as camber and caster goes. It is what it is. We're going to try to get through this year with what we've got, but I think sitting right now, I checked it, and it's right around 10 degrees caster in the right front. The left front, as you see here, runs around 7.5 degrees of caster. That gives us 2.5 to 3 degrees caster split across the front. As narrow as these things are and as wide as the tires are on the right side of this kart, it deloads a bunch when you turn to the left. In fact, I saw roughly 20% difference in crossweight by turning to the left, and then conversely, turning it to the right, I saw a plus 20% gain in crossweight. And that's all caster related. As the right front turns, because it's laid back, it doesn't just turn flat, it actually drives that right front into the ground as it's turning to the right. That actually makes sense. As you're turning to the right, the kart's free, so you want to tighten it back up, and by putting that crossweight into it, it loads the left rear tire more to help tighten the car up under throttle. As you're turning into the corner, the caster on it actually pushes the left front down and de-wedges the kart to help it rotate into the corner. When the wheel's straight, you're on your static caster, and as you exit the corner, have to turn to the right a little bit, you see that crossweight gain. Okay, here we are at the back of the kart, and I'm going to show you a couple of things that I did back here. This is stuff that I used to do back when I was karting, back when I was 10 years old, back in the early 90s. One thing is that I always go through and I tape the ends of any of the hubs. So like the left rear hub, the brake hub, the sprocket hub, the right rear hub. I tape both sides of it, and that's to keep that keyway from sliding out. As you can see right here with this brake, the keyway is just kind of lined up, and when you clamp them in, sometimes they don't lock that keyway down well enough. So by putting a piece of tape on either side of it, it keeps that keyway from kicking out. I always wrap it a certain direction so that it can't lift up and open up as you're racing. As the axle is spinning, that tape is always going to be kind of forced down, and it won't ever come off, and it's not going to move on you. That's just to ensure, like I say, to keep your keyway from kicking out. The brake hasn't been done. I will do the brake. I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like when the keyway is open. And yeah, this one is being held in place by the hub itself. But unless you go through and you actually find, you tape those down, or you hose clamp them, or you do something to lock those keys in, they do tend to kick out. You can see now that I've got the tape over top of this keyway. This keyway is so long that the key will actually slide out and then eject itself. So by running this tape and covering half of that up, that keyway can't come out. It can't go anywhere. Both sides are the same way. And like, as you can see on this one, I'm actually covering the edge of the key, and that just keeps locking that key down, keeping it from being able to kick out. It's just kind of a lightweight safety deal. That tape doesn't weigh anything. It's easy to do, and it's just insurance to make sure that you're not going to have any issues there. I've got the sprocket saver, and I only run this on the one side, and the reason for that is as the car sees load, it's always trying to shove the axle this way. I don't really see a need to run it on the second side. It just makes it kind of a pain in the butt to change the gear. You've got to disassemble that, take that off there, pull the gear off, put the gear on, put that back on, and it's just extra crap that you don't really need. Running it on this side also helps guide the chain. So if it does kind of get pushed over, say you take an impact on the right rear, you bounce it off the wall, or another cart hits you in the right rear and it does shove the axle over a little bit, this will actually help the chain track onto the gear a little bit easier. Having it on this side of it without being on the right side, the first thing that's going to happen is your chain's going to kind of leap off the edge of the gear and you checked your chain. This will actually help align that chain on that gear by riding on that edge. These shaft collars are just a secondary clamp to ensure that the axle's not going to move. I have these lock bolts, these set screws on my bearings. When I get this all aligned and I get everything where I want it, I'll take my 3/16 drill bit and I'll actually put a little drill indent into the axle. I'll drill down just a little tiny bit so that when I run my set screws down, it also helps lock this collar into place and doesn't let that axle move around. The shaft collar, as well as these on both this right side bearing and the left side bearing, are all just to keep that axle from moving. When I'm putting an axle in, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mock the entire axle up with all my parts, but I'm not going to tighten them. I'm going to leave them loose, or I may just snug them up. This ensures that I've got everything in with no bind before I go through and tighten it up. If I was to put this cassette in and then lock down the bearing inside of the cassette, then slide the axle in, the axle may not be aligned correctly with that next bearing, and it will create preload, axle load, and it's just not going to spin as freely. This axle spins really, really freely because I got everything in its place before I tightened it all down. When you're in the corner and the cart sees that right rear axle load, it's going to want to distort everything, and if you're too tight on this left side, the rotor will drag against the pad and it's going to slow the cart down more than you want. By leaving just a little bit more gap on this side and running it a little bit tighter on the right side, you still have your short pedal throw because they're tight on their clamp, but you don't have to worry about that deformation of the frame or that little bit of axle movement to lock into your brake. The brake line that I am using is actually the same brake line that I use on the fronts of our super late models. It is actually a number 2 brake line. And I know it's difficult to see, but look how tiny that fitting port is. When you run on a smaller brake line, you've got less room for the hydraulics to squish, so you have a more firm pedal. The larger your brake line, the more squish you have in the pedal, the more room those hydraulics have to expand, and it just kind of takes the feel out of the pedal. I run one brake line. I want to run as minimal amount of crap as I have to, and this caliper has a crossover, has kind of a bridge tube so that both pistons work off the feet on the one side. So I've got the bleeder, but I've only got the one brake line operating the entire caliper. For a little bit of safety and to keep my knee from getting destroyed on that steering shaft bolt, I've taken this knee knocker. It's actually a Joe's Racing Products part that they build for their steering column bracket. This bolts onto their steering column bracket and it keeps your knee from banging together while you're oval track racing. I was able to take this one and modify it, drill the holes out a little bit, and then mount it to my brake. The way I've got it designed is when I'm sitting there, my leg will come just to this side of it, and it'll keep my leg from bouncing over and damaging my knee. As you can see, I have to get a tall engine mount because I was struggling with getting right rear tire clearance versus the air cleaner. So I ran the tall inclination motor mount. I also ended up running it nearly all the way forward because when I put this thing on the scales, I had a lot more rear weight than I was hoping for. So by extending the chain and sliding the engine as far forward as I can get it, it definitely helped with keeping some front weight in the cart. Front weight should help it turn. If I'm struggling with exit, there's some other things I can do as far as width with the rear end, but this is where my starting point is with this engine. I'm kind of a big guy, and I've got a deep layback seat, so I figured, I might have to get some weight towards the front of this cart. When I was putting the steering together, I kept feeling some really odd binds in it, and I wasn't happy with it. One thing that I did was I pushed the shaft up a little bit. I greased all my knuckles, and I added this shaft collar. This shaft collar is going to ride on this lower steering shaft mount, and it's going to keep it from pushing down and binding any of my rod ends. It doesn't need to be any higher, doesn't need to be any lower. I've still got my cotter pin down there. Everything's safe. Also, when I went through my steering, I found that my rod ends were binding up with the spindles, so I added some washers and I did a little bit of tweaking to make those operate better. Also, by changing the design of the steering at the steering shaft, I was able to cancel out a lot of those binds also. The left front has only got one adjustment hole for the steer arm, and the right front had two. I ended up going with the shorter point, which is closer to the spindle pivot. That's actually going to help that tire turn quicker, and because that tire tends to carry more load, we can increase the slip angle speed and slow the slip angle speed down, and it should help the car maintain grip a little bit better. As I'm assembling the cart, everywhere where there is like a bushing, I will clean the paint off or the powder coat, and I'll give it a fresh place for it to ride. I will also grease it up really, really well to ensure that there's no binds and everything works nice and free. On all of my bolts, I run a copper anti-seize. And again, on all these bearings, I'll clean all these bearings up that are inside the spindle, inside the frame that ride that kingpin. I'm going to clean all those up and keep those as free moving as possible. One major thing that gets overlooked on carts is you're going to have to clean this thing a lot being a dirt cart. You're going to have dirt and mud and crap all over it. So making sure that everything is well greased and lubricated, i.e. steering shaft pivots, both the top and the bottom, making sure everything moves free with no binds. It's just going to help you in the long run. You're going to have less wear on parts. It's going to work freer. It's going to drive better. Everything about it's more positive. And anytime you have to clean these things, you use any water, they get any moisture in them, those parts tend to rust and they just get gummed up and nasty. So maintenance, keeping everything clean, your go-kart's going to be happier, your race car is going to be happier. I've always preached clean, 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 clean. You're not going to eat off of a dirty plate, so why go drive a dirty race car? The tires I am using are these Maxxis Pinks. These are brand hammer new. And as you see, I've gone through and I marked them R01, R02, and what I did was after I got them mounted, I went through, I aired them all up to 6 psi, and then I measured them at 10 psi, measured them at 14 psi, and I recorded the difference in the diameters of them. And this is going to help me when I'm figuring out my stagger later on. I don't necessarily need to measure it every time because I don't see these tires changing a large amount. I have not gone through and prepped these yet. Like I say, our race is a little over a week away. I'm planning on next week doing a sand on them and starting to prep them, getting them ready to go racing. But I just thought that this was interesting information after I got them mounted up and I checked all the diameters. As you can see here, the right rear tire went from 33 and 15/16 at 14 psi down to 33 and 3/4. So even though it's only a few sixteenths of an inch, it does make a difference on your stagger. On the left side tires, I did the same thing. And as you can see here, the L03, if I was to run the left rear at say 10 psi and the right rear at 6 psi, now I can calculate my stagger. I'm going to be right around 3/4 of an inch of stagger, like I say, at 10 and 6. Just like doing my alignment, I did put the car on the scales and got some rough scale numbers as we started. I was unhappy with where my ride heights were off of the initial check, and when I looked at the cross weight, it was way higher than what I was hoping for. So this is with the driver in, this is with the driver out. The total of the cart is 419 pounds with driver. The rear weight was 56.5, the cross weight was 66, and the left side weight was 59.5. Like I say, I'm no sort of oval track kart wizard, but I do know that I want that number and that number a little bit closer, just like what we do with our super late models. So I moved the right rear hole, the right rear cassette down one hole, from the middle hole to the bottom hole. It helped me achieve the ride heights that I wanted. I'm 1 3/8 on both rights and 1 1/4 on both lefts. I've got 1/8 of an inch of rake, and it brought my cross weight down to 56.5 without driver, 56.2 with driver. So that was pretty interesting. Like I say, this is just kind of the rough-in stuff, the alignment, the scale numbers. The next video, I will have all the final scale numbers and all the ending information before I go out and run it. I'm going to record everything that I can as far as all my shims for my spindle, all the wheel spacers across both fronts. I'm going to record everything I can, all the information that I can. I'll share all that in the next video. And yeah, we'll just continue to build and see how this thing performs at its first race. Well, that's about all I've got for today. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a walkthrough on what we've got, what we're going to be working with, and what my objective is with this series. I'm actually really excited to go racing with this go-kart. I'm just a racer nerd. Anything racing, be it slot cars, RC cars, go-karts, iRacing, the super late models. I'm just a nerd for racing. I love the physics of it. I love the dynamics of it. And like I say, I don't claim to be any sort of a go-kart wizard. Let's get that out there, and I want you all to know that right now. I'm not going to miraculously, win the lottery and know everything perfectly on this kart when we get started. I'm willing to learn. I love learning. I love learning dynamics. And the one thing that I think I can offer with this YouTube channel is that I can, when I learn something, I can convey it to you guys. You guys can have something entertaining to watch and do some learning, and everybody benefits. Again, I am not a know-it-all with go-karts. I'm not a know-it-all with the supers. I'm just a nerd with the video camera that likes to go racing. I hope you guys find something positive in the stuff that I provide. I hope you guys learn something, or maybe get motivated to go work on your own race car, whatever you have. And ultimately, racing is just a big community, big family, and whatever we can do to help build that, we all benefit from it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, share it if you think that you have a buddy that could benefit from what you're seeing. And yeah, let's keep on digging. Make sure you hit the alert button. I'll have another video coming out next week right before we go racing with what I did to prepare my tires, my final scale numbers, as well as the graphics. And then yeah, when we go racing, I'll have all my GoPros, and we're gonna make a badass video so that everybody can enjoy it. And like I say, I'll tell you guys everything that I learn. And yeah, let's have some fun with it. And I hope I don't suck. See you guys later.